And we are really excited to introduce our very first webinar in our new Media Landscape series. So I just wanted to talk just very quickly about the series and our campaign goals and some upcoming speakers that we invite you to attend as well. So the Media Landscapes campaign is brought to you by Minitex, of course, and some of our funding partners are there on the screens. And what it is just a year-long campaign, and we thought we would bring you both national and local speakers around the concept of media and news literacy. And our goals are to help Minnesota library staff really understand how people navigate the media and information landscape and how those forces within that landscape influence the navigation, to learn how to build reflection and intentionality into their information consumption, and then hopefully to gain some strategies for working with our communities on intentional approaches to information consumption. So that is kind of what we are hoping for. We do have several different national speakers booked. Upcoming, our April speaker is John McFreeman, and he is an expert on deep fakes. So he'll be talking about that. And my colleague Beth, I think, is going to put some links in the chat here. So if you are interested in registering or reading more about John McFreeman, you can check out the levelup.org website, which is where all of the media landscape information lives. And then upcoming in May, we have Lisa Hines, who will be talking about critical thinking and evaluating information. So that is kind of what's upcoming. We are also looking for your expertise and your knowledge as local Minnesota librarians and educators. So if you have an idea and you would like to share your expertise, best practices, programming ideas around this topic, please let us know. There is a call for proposal form that you can fill out. Again, that's located on that Level Up, but that is also a link there that you can check out. But today we are so excited to have Renee Hobbs be our kickoff speaker. So my first introduction to Renee was, I didn't tell Renee this, was actually when I was at St. Kate's getting my MLIS degree. My capstone kind of big project and paper relied heavily on Renee Hobbs' work, and I just love what she had to say, and so I was citing her all over my work. And then a few years later, she was the speaker. I'm a former English teacher, and so she was a speaker at a fall workshop for the MCT organization, the Minnesota Council of Teachers of English, and had a great all-day workshop. So I am so excited that she agreed to be here. So Renee is an expert on digital and media literacy education. She's the author of 12 books, including Mind Over Media Propaganda Education for a Digital Age, which I highly recommend. It's super interesting. Which won the AAP 2021 Prose Award for Excellence in Social Sciences. She's also the founder and director of the Media Education Lab, and I know she's going to talk about that a little bit today, at the University of Rhode Island, where she co-directs the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy, a 12-credit program for educators, librarians, and media professionals. So welcome, Renee. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop my share.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Linda. I'm really so excited about the Media Landscapes campaign. I think it's such a great way to bring librarians and educators together. And I have to say this, I am such a big fan of the sort of intellectual leadership in your state. Not only am I a super fan of your senator, who rocks my world, right, Amy Klobuchar, but I definitely appreciate the thought leadership that I can see in the library space among Minnesota librarians. And of course, I've been super inspired by the K-12 education and the college faculty in this state, and certainly the folks working in the nonprofit sector. I am Rhode Island's biggest fan of the Walker Art Center. Just saying. All right, so let me see if I can start my presentation now. There's my PowerPoint, and I'm optimizing it for video and sound. Let's see what you see here. How do I make it a little bit bigger? Let's see if I can figure that out. Hold on here. I know there's a way to do that. There we go. It should be full screen now. Good show. So there's my contact information. Hobbs at URI is the best way to reach me, and Twitter is my only real social media addiction. Today, the materials and videos and resources that I'm sharing with you, I hope that you remix and improve upon. That's why I'm making all these materials available to you at this bit.ly site, bit.ly/MN library. So you'll be able to use these resources and or remix them and share them with others. I always like to reflect on how humor can point out some of the paradoxes in our culture. Here you see a cartoon, a guy while looking at his computer screen. These ads, these targeted ads, make me feel like I'm being watched. He's drinking Yum Cola, you see, and he's seeing an ad for Yum Cola Max. But then as soon as he has that thought, ping, protect your brain from intrusion. Tinfoil headwear, only £9.99. If you've ever felt like Facebook or Google is listening in on your conversations, you will appreciate this joke. And this little cartoon has a lot to do with what we're going to be talking about this week. But I want to situate that I'm a media literacy educator, and all of my interest in propaganda and all the topics that we're going to be talking about today come from my deep appreciation of literacy, the sharing of meaning through symbols. It's just that literacy takes on many forms, right? And so I'm absolutely intrigued at how media and technology create unreal realities. And this is something that that humans have been talking about now for 3,500 years, right? The power of language and images and technology to create unreal realities for all kinds of good and all kinds of evil. Today, I'm going to explore these 4 questions. What kinds of dispositions, knowledge, and skills help people navigate in a world full of sponsored content and clickbait and political ads and memes and disinformation, especially when those things are remixed and retransmitted by our friends, neighbors, and family? I'll be exploring the question, how can library staff model the kinds of critical thinking needed to manage the diverse forms of propaganda that are part of everyday life? I'll be reflecting on what instructional strategies around propaganda education can be used with library patrons of all ages. And finally, we'll explore this question: how can digital creation activities by library staff, as well as patrons and students, help in understanding the persuasive genres? So let's get started. Of course, in November of just a few months ago, I was really thrilled when the American Library Association released its fine report, Media Literacy in the Library, a guide for library practitioners. It takes on how we can support the lifelong learning needs of adults. And the 5 big topics that the report called out for special focus were the architecture of the internet, civics, media economics, misinformation, and media creation. So I'll take on 1, 2, 3. I'll take on 4 of those topics in today's talk. One of the reasons why I continue to be so curious about media literacy is the way in which it is relevant to our lived experience. And that's partly why media literacy keeps changing. It keeps changing. It's not the same as the media literacy that I studied in the 1990s or at the turn of the 21st century or even just 10 years ago. because media literacy is responsive to people's lived experience with media. It changes in response to the changes in media technology and culture. And I can't help but see media literacy as an expanded conceptualization of literacy that includes a whole range of habits and dispositions and attitudes and behaviors. And you can see some of these are near and dear to your heart, including search, curation, reading, inquiry, credibility analysis, right? Citizenship, ethical reasoning, collaboration, dialogue. I mean, these are all skills librarians cultivate in their programming and outreach to patrons and to citizens. But in some ways, the bigger meta issue of media literacy is embodied by the famous quote. It's sometimes attributed to Marshall McLuhan, but it was probably John Culkin, his one of his proteges, who actually said it, right? That being able to critically analyze the media helps you notice the environment around you that you don't notice because it's so ubiquitous, because you take it so for granted, because it's so much a part of ordinary life. So today we're going to let the little fish guide us through some big ideas, shall we? So media literacy can sometimes be conceptualized as distinct from information literacy or news literacy or digital literacy because of its focus on these big ideas from media studies, issues about interpretation and meaning, representation, media effects, semiotics, and political economy. And these 5 frames for thinking about media are even more important now with the rise of new media that are creating new kinds of political economies for the commodification of human attention. Now, I thought it would be fun for us to practice media literacy by practicing media literacy. So let's take a look at this message.
I am grateful to have been loved and to be loved now. Love liberates. It doesn't bind. Love says, I love you.
I cut all my hair off.
Yes. I love you if you're in China.
I got your favorite.
Thank you, babe.
I love you if you're across town. I love you if you're in Harlem.
We miss you, okay?
I love you. I would like to be near you. I'd like to hear your voice in my ear. I'd like to have your arms around me.
Hey, Mom. I miss you guys.
Baby, we're right here.
But that's not possible now, so I love you. Go.
Wow. Oh, what a warm and emotionally evocative message. If we use the media literacy smartphone, we can analyze media by doing a reality check, thinking about the private gain or public good, looking at what's left out, what values are presented, what stereotypes are activated, and what solutions are offered. In some ways, the practice of asking critical questions about media, the heart of media literacy, wants to make sure that we're thinking about the author and the purpose, the techniques used to attract attention, the way values are represented through choices made by authors, the different interpretations that are possible from media messages, and the point of view that is presented in a media message. So if this were a face-to-face workshop, I would do a turn and talk, inviting you to sit with a friend for a minute to talk over these questions. Who's the author? What's the purpose? How does it attract and hold your attention, this media message? What values are represented? Who's represented? How might different people interpret this message? And what is omitted? Now that you have these questions in mind, let's look at that ad again. And then I'll ask you to make some comments on what you notice. Are you ready?
I am grateful to have been loved and to be loved now. Love liberates. It doesn't bind. Love says, I love you.
I cut all my hair off.
Yes.
I love you if you're in China.
I got your favorite.
Thank you, babe.
I love you if you're across town. I love you if you're in Harlem.
We miss you, okay?
I love you. I would like to be near you. I'd like to hear your voice in my ear. I'd like to have your arms around me.
Hey, Mom. I miss you guys.
Baby, we're right here.
But that's not possible now, so I love you. Go.
Oh,
I am
okay. So now it's time for you to unmute your microphone or open up the chat box. What do you have to say about this intriguing, complicated message? Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first? Aha! Vina says in the chat, would the author be Google Duo? Yes, that's exactly right. So the author is a corporation, Google, and the product that they are selling is the product that you are that they're selling is Google Duo. It makes you feel like it's coming from Maya Angelou, but it's coming from Google. Beth, what a great observation. That is absolutely fascinating. We recognize Maya Angelou. We realize that this is a kind of poetic use of language, but it's being used for a marketing purpose. Thanks for sharing. And are they using a well-known person to make it credible? Wow, that is exactly right. Certainly they are. And what a great point about Amy. Amy says in the chat, it feels so timely, and yet Maya Angelou's been dead since 2014. When was her voice recorded? What was the original text, or how was it remixed? What an absolutely spot on question. Clearly, this is a situation where Google bought the rights to use this voice recording. And Pam makes another really interesting observation that all of the depictions are positive, feel-good situations. In fact, we could even say they're examples of relational ecstasy. These are not just ordinary conversations you have with your ordinary family members. These are moments of extreme bliss, right? And as Sarah points out very nicely in her comment, that Google is the in-between. Google is the glue that connects you to the people you love. Google is glue that binds you to the people you love. Great job here in critically analyzing this reflection. It's a really complicated piece that helps us understand how when we ask questions and pay attention to text, we can deepen our awareness of its form and its content, right? And so naturally that brings us to thinking about this Google ad as a form of propaganda. So let's get into it, shall we? Got it. So you know what I did in that video? I took 6 definitions of propaganda from the earliest, one of the earliest from the 1930s, all the way up to the present day. And I used those 6 different definitions to show you how propaganda can be found in journalism and public relations, in advertising, in government and politics, in entertainment, in education, and in activism. Now, a lot of times when people hear the word propaganda, they go immediately to thinking of it as a smear word. You know, propaganda equals bad. But when we understand that propaganda can be found in entertainment, in education, in activism, in journalism, in government and politics, we realize that actually it's really inaccurate to say that propaganda is just a smear word. In fact, propaganda can be beneficial or harmful. And now, I bet you're wondering, beneficial propaganda? And my students have told this to me for years. What a strange phrase, because we only tend to think about propaganda as harmful. How do we think of propaganda as being beneficial? Well, that's why I started that video with that definition from one of the leading scholars in propaganda of the 1930s, who said propaganda was one way to induce large numbers of people to act together. Propaganda is essential for citizenship as it builds coalitions and allows people to share and have a set of shared beliefs. The term propaganda was originally used as a means to describe the missionary work of the Catholic Church as it did its outreach around the world, bringing a message of love and forgiveness. So propaganda that's beneficial, there's a lot of it. It's all over the place. So it's not just harmful. For example, it can be...
Wear a mask. Is this really much to ask? Tie some fabric round your face. Oh, it's the simplest of tasks. At the gym, at the store, don't treat it like such a chore. No, these mandates aren't malicious. All your theories are fictitious. Stop the lies, stop the fights. No one's taking away your rights. All this speculation makes me need a flask. Come on and read some data. All you masturbators, wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. It's a mask, it's a mask.
All right, I think that's probably enough. You got the feeling, right? Public service announcements are an example of beneficial propaganda. And while in the 20th century, it was largely institutions that spread propaganda in the form of public service announcements. You might remember the ad council sending you messages about don't take drugs and all that. Today, peer-to-peer propaganda is the dominant way we encounter it. This remix was created by somebody who was seeking to spread a positive message about mask wearing and using a lot of humor. And of course, some of you are familiar with my work on copyright clarity, understand that this is a great example of fair use, highly protected by the 1976 Copyright Act. So there's lots of reasons why I love this clip. So if we were to try to explain propaganda, we would say it appears in a variety of forms. It's strategic and intentional. It aims to influence attitudes, opinions, and behaviors of a large group of people, not just a small group. It can be beneficial or harmful. It can use truth, half-truths, or lies. It uses any means to accomplish its goal. But this is most important, I think. Propaganda doesn't always work. Propaganda only works when it is effective at tapping into our deepest values, fears, hopes, and dreams. Without our participation, propaganda does not have influence. It requires our participation to have influence. So when I'm introducing students to try to wrap their heads around that complicated and interesting way of thinking about propaganda, I say, well, spot the 4 techniques. Propaganda activates strong emotions. That's at the top for a reason, right? It uses emotion to bypass critical thinking. Propaganda responds to audiences' hopes, fears, and dreams, audiences' needs. Propaganda simplifies information. So that is a very good way for me to help students differentiate between propaganda and other forms of media that make things more complex, right? Propaganda doesn't make things more complex. It simplifies information, and often it simplifies by attacking opponents, creating an us versus them world, right? Which simplify through making a hero, a victim, and a villain, right? So these techniques make it easy to spot propaganda that's all around us. Now here's a thought question for the chat. What kinds of propaganda are in your library? Open up the chat room right now. Tell me about all the different kinds of propaganda, or maybe some examples. What kinds of propaganda are in your library? Tammy, you rock, girl. Yeah, your read posters, they're propaganda for reading. What kind of propaganda is in your library? You might want to think about examples. There's lots of different kinds of propaganda in your library. Like what? Wear a mask signs. Good job, Susanna. Flyers about how to get a vaccine. Absolutely. That's beneficial propaganda, right? Posters from the MLA on the value of a medical librarian. Oh, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing. Sure. What else? Book displays. If book displays reached a large audience, which they might, depending on the library, I would say that could qualify, right? Posters about domestic abuse. That is fascinating. Good job there. So you guys are starting to get the idea. Info on how to get a library card depends on if it's done really simply. 1, 2, 3. Is it that easy? But their books in your library are propaganda too, you guys. Okay. And you might have some of these kinds of books by Milo Yiannopoulos, Ann Coulter, or Vox Day, the alt-right guy, the white supremacist. But you might also have books like this in your library, right? Books about Bernie Sanders' political revolution, or a manual for Christian dissidents, or Naomi Klein's Capitalism versus Climate. So does this only count if the specific book is being advertised? No, the book itself functions as propaganda according to the definition, right? The book itself is a form of media, and so therefore it can also function as propaganda. But that makes us become immediately aware of something super important. Propaganda is in the eye of the beholder. You know, when I see that heinous shoot 'em up war movie that makes killing look so exciting and glamorous, I see immediately that it's a form of war propaganda. Yes, it's an entertainment film, but it's glorifying and glamorizing killing. It makes complete sense to me to see that as propaganda. But not everyone would see that film as propaganda, right? Some would see it as entertainment or as information, right? Or as inspiration. So it turns out that it's hard for me to conceptualize messages that align with my values, that are absolutely baked into the fabric of my ideologies. It's hard for me to see that those are propaganda, right? I was startled the first time I heard somebody say they thought the New York Times was propaganda. I was like, you're kidding me. That's ridiculous. And only much later did I think, well, I can imagine a person looking at the New York Times and seeing the ways in which it offers propaganda. And so propaganda being in the eye of the beholder means we have to adopt a stance of humility toward thinking about how our interpretations of media messages affect the way we understand the different kinds of propaganda that are circulating in culture. For most of us, we're so stuck on the words historical baggage, right, that we can't think about anything else. And in fact, what motivated me to write Mind Over Media was when year after year, I mean, I've been working on this book since 2007, and for year after year, students would come into my propaganda class saying, oh, I'm so interested in taking this class because I'm so interested in history. And I was like, well, we're not going to really spend a lot of time on history. This is a class about propaganda. But a lot of students think propaganda is only something that happened long, long ago in a faraway land in Germany. That's crazy, because propaganda's recent past shows us the origins of the concept of fake news, right? Came right from our president himself, right? Who says that the New York Times and the Washington Post and Amazon are propaganda machines, right? And they're failing, he said. And today, we have new forms of propaganda emerging, and we're just starting to figure them out. Let's take a look. What's so fascinating about that example is it's using the what I ordered, what I got trope, right? Which is a familiar internet trope that gets repurposed for all different forms of entertainment and forms of expression and forms of propaganda. And weirdly, what communicates that strong emotion is that awful, awful music. The dissonance of that music just makes you repulsed. And the repulsed feeling you have about the music is attached to an image of the Biden family, I think. Wow. That piece of propaganda is doing a very complicated rhetorical task of activating your emotions non-verbally, in large measure, right? By attaching the Biden family to this dissonant, ugly music. How about this one? Wow, this one's also rhetorically pretty complicated, isn't it? Notice that the author is Daddy Mitch McConnell. Okay, that's a strange name for a digital author. The lyrics of the song, "Loving You is a Losing Game," and then a very digitized animation of Mike Pence dancing in front of a very fictional location called Camp New Grace, where you pray the gay away, right? So this is also a form of social criticism, right? A critical commentary on politics and an emotionally evocative piece of propaganda. Many times, our patrons and our students, and maybe even ourselves, come across something as entertaining as these things, and we like them because they evoke feelings of pleasure, because we agree with them, and we share them. And in doing so, we're feeling like we're reaffirming our identity, right? And when we do that, we are communicating to our social networks, I agree with this, or this is important or interesting. But of course, that is what makes viral propaganda such a powerful force and such an uncontrollable political force in our society today. So some of the first workshops that we offer with our students and our patrons is stuff about how sometimes effective propaganda seems to compel you to share it. You just feel this strong urge to share it because it activated such strong emotions in you. And some of you are old enough to remember the first time many of us fell for that trick with Kony 2012, right? When we saw that 30-minute documentary, and it was it a documentary, or what was it, an art film, or what was it? But it was so emotional that we just felt we had to share it, and it racked up 100 million views in just 7 days. So really, we're just starting to understand the power of peer-to-peer propaganda. But we understand that the engine of peer-to-peer propaganda is activating strong emotions. So we want to make sure we look at all the ways in which emotions can be hijacked to spread messages. Okay, so that brings me to my third and final chunk of topic that I want to talk about with you. And that really has to do with this really great concept. It's called the attention economy. You know, we participate in the attention economy both as consumers of media, but also as creators of media as well. And so it's really important for everyone to have a better understanding of how our behaviors and our actions are part of this attention economy. We have to see ourselves not as working outside of it, but within it. Well, what does that mean? Of course, it's natural for almost all of us to raise questions like these as we encounter our increasingly personalized world. Why do the shoes I was looking at on Zappos follow me from one website to another? Why do some Facebook friends never show up on my news feed? Why do Google search results seem so different when I use my grandma's computer? Right. So many times people encounter aspects of their online life that raise questions. In fact, in my community, we've been thinking a lot about this one. Why are the Google apps for education offered for free? What a great question. Wow. Well, opening up that door invites us to understand more deeply media economics. Of course, we are so romantically attached to Google. It's so hard for us to critically analyze it because we have most of us have warm and fuzzy feelings about Google. We're so close that we finish each other's sentences. If you're like me, you use Google hundreds of times, 100 times a day, right? So understanding its economics is challenged by the fact that we have these feelings of loyalty toward our friend, Google. And it takes real reflection to consider why students ages 14 to 23 prefer learning from YouTube videos over any other kinds of in-person group activities, learning apps, games, or reading from printed books. It's a major tool for learning. And how did it become so beloved? Well, one answer has to do with algorithmic personalization. It's present in almost all of the media services we use online as personalization has entered the worlds of information. The New York Times uses algorithmic personalization to decide what to show you when you use it online. Entertainment, here's the Netflix page of my son-in-law, whose Netflix looks completely different from mine, right? And I can see what he likes by his what gets recommended to him. And of course, persuasion is also personalized. Now, this is not a new thing. Back in one of the books I wrote in 2014, I was looking at the sort of intellectual grandparents of media literacy. And I created a website called thegrandparentsofmedialiteracy.com. And it's a crowdsourced website. Anyone can upload an example of someone whose ideas represent their sort of metaphorical grandparent, somebody whose ideas influence their thinking about their work in media literacy. And one of the big guys is a guy named Dallas Smythe. Dallas Smythe wrote around 1975 that audiences are a type of commodity that are produced, sold, distributed, and consumed. And that by using media and viewing advertising, workers end up participating in capitalism even when they're relaxing at home. What an interesting way to put it. Of course, Dallas Smythe was the guy who brought us the famous slogan, "You are the product being manufactured." And this concept is perhaps one of the most important concepts to help our patrons and our students understand. How are our choices shaped by algorithms? So we're starting to help people understand the value of something that's sometimes called data exhaust. The keystroke data and the URLs and the time spent using media that basically can be packaged to advertisers in very, very profitable ways. This is the real business of Google, Facebook, and Amazon. And they, in as much, tell us this. Back in 2011, Eli Pariser's Filter Bubble introduced this idea, saying, increasingly online, it's becoming impossible to escape your own point of view. A squirrel dying in front of your house might be more relevant to your interests right now than people dying in Africa, said Mark Zuckerberg. And Eric Schmidt, Google CEO, it'll be very hard for people to watch or consume something that has not been tailored for them. I don't know about you, but I find these 3 quotes to be kind of chilling, actually. And I want to think a lot more about how over the years, I have also become a victim of the algorithmic personalization in my own life. Right now, we're starting to see how media companies are investing heavily in facial recognition and sentiment analysis in order to identify people's emotional responses. So don't think they're doing facial recognition just to help you, right? Just because it's great to have all your pictures tagged with the photo of the name of the person. Companies are investing in facial recognition technologies because they want to be able to use the nonverbal expressions of your feelings, because feelings are the most important criteria that affects all of our behavior. Feelings dominate over facts. It's why lots of people in the media business were like, okay, yeah, all this stuff about fake news and oh, you guys think fact checking can help to solve it. Feelings over facts for almost all humans throughout all of human history. We have feelings, and then we go look for facts to support our feelings, right? And think about that in relation to who you decide to vote for, where you decide to spend your money, how you make your choices about almost every aspect of your personal and social life. Shoshana Zuboff wrote a great book about this called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. She said, instead of mining the natural landscape, surveillance capitalists extract their raw material from human experience. So our online experience is the raw material that they seek to profit from. Because just like with everything, the ability to predict your behavior is profitable, but the ability to control your behavior is a gold mine. And you know, I have felt totally victimized by this sometimes. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Did you ever find yourself scrolling on Facebook and there was some kind of, for me, it's like a makeup tutorial. It's a freaking makeup tutorial and I am absorbed into it. And now I go shopping and now I pick out my colors and it's like, and then reality hits me and I'm like, what are you doing? $35 for a eyeliner stick that you don't like and you will never use? But my feelings were captivated, right? And Facebook knows me, knows that I've fallen for that trap so many times that it keeps offering me stuff that I find irresistible. Have you had that experience? Do you understand that idea? The ability to reliably predict and control your behavior is a gold mine. Whoa. All right, so what do we do about it, right? Well, what do we do about it is we have to advance public understanding of algorithms. Right now, public understanding of algorithm is super, super low. Look at this data from the Pew Research Center. 74% of Americans in a survey, this was in 2018, so this might be a little bit better now, but 74% of people did not know that Facebook maintained a list of their interests and traits. 51% said they're not comfortable with Facebook compiling this information. 27% say the listings don't very accurately represent them. So improving public understanding of algorithms is super important, and it's one of the topics that's brought up in the report from the American Library Association on media literacy in the library. They suggest that book clubs, screenings and discussions, technology classes, makerspace programs, community celebrations, and passive programs and displays are all places where we could help to advance public understanding of algorithms. And I am so excited about the Landscapes project that you are initiating here in Minnesota, because I feel like you are the first statewide test of this idea. And the creativity of librarians is going to be evident in the way we figure out how to help build public understanding of algorithms. But of course, it's going to take collaboration to transform ignorance into understanding. You can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. We all need each other, and we all need to collaborate. So that's partly why I'm so jazzed about the power of creative media production, as it supports the development of media literacy competencies and lifelong learning skills themselves. You know, that's a big part of how we understand media literacy as reading and critically analyzing and writing, composing and creating with media. And in my book called The Library Screen Scene, which I published in 2019 from Oxford University Press, I looked at film and media literacy programs in schools, colleges, and communities. I looked at over 178 programs, and I tell a really cool story of the creative ways that librarians, school librarians, academic librarians, and public librarians are advancing film and media literacy through programs and through services. And I put up two great examples. One is a really cool video called What Librarians Wish You Knew About Libraries, which manages to be informative and not too self-promotional. And then, of course, the famous work that's coming out of the Nashville Public Library. Here we are, our children's book being read and assigned simultaneously. Such a creative example of work that promotes the competencies of librarians themselves and the confidence in becoming digital authors, right? Because that's what it takes, right? That's what it takes to create media. You have to have confidence that your voice matters and that it's worth putting out there and that you have something to say. And that's partly why we welcome librarians to the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, because there, during that intensive week-long program, you get to practice in a very low-stakes, friendly, fun way, making media, make an infographic, make a podcast, right? Make a website, make a simple animation, because when you build your confidence, right, then your creativity can soar. All right, so I got to end with my absolute favorite piece of propaganda ever produced by a public library, in my opinion. I love this thing so much, and now that we've had this learning experience of thinking about media literacy and critical questions, thinking about propaganda in relation to the activation of emotion, and thinking about algorithms in relation to the ways in which messages are targeted specifically to us, I've chosen this as my conclusion. Let's take a look. Enjoy.
Welcome to our banned book collection. So thankful for this, it's such a blessing, yeah. I'll take a second just to show my affection. These books are the sunrise when they're throwing shade, trying to keep people far away. Make me want to read each little word so slowly. They say things some just don't like, so they shut it down. Lots of reasons why they want to take them out. Anyone can read them if they take the time to find. Look around and find them right here in the room now. Tú puedes leer los libros que elijas. Elegir es una libertad. Muchos libros han sido desafiados. Tú puedes leer los libros que elijas. Elegir es una libertad. Lee un libro que ha sido desafiado. Leer despacito. Lectura de libros prohibidos. Están dando un privilegio. Y estos son autores cuestionados. Leer despacito. La casa en Mango Street de Sandra Cisneros. Francisco Rosales, libro chicano. Loverboys escrito por Ana Castillo. Lee La Casa de los Espíritus.
Is that not adorable?
Anyone can read them if they take the time to find. Look around and find them right here in the room now. Tú puedes leer los libros que elijas. Elegir es una libertad. Muchos libros han sido desafiados.
Wow. Okay, so there's so many things to say about that in so little time, but did you notice, like all great propaganda, there's a hero, the librarian. There's a villain, the people who want to ban the books, right? And there's a victim, the public, right? So that attacking opponents, us then framing, simplifying information, activating strong emotions, it just makes you just want to grab that book by Sandra Cisneros and read it. So powerful, so well-crafted, so creative, such a great example of using propaganda for positive, beneficial purposes. In fact, it turns out that activating strong emotions, relating to audience needs, and simplifying information is the perfect recipe for a virality. And in a way, librarians have a unique opportunity to step into this space of helping people understand the complicated new propaganda environments that we inhabit today. I hope you've gotten some ideas from this presentation that you can use. And in any case, feel free to access the slides, the videos, and the materials at that bit.ly website. And can you believe we have like about 4 minutes for comments and questions? Ha ha!
Hey Renee, my name is Matt. I'm with Minitex. Thanks for your awesome presentation. As I'm thinking back about the kind of topics that you covered, so you identify kind of the need to consider the purpose and identify different pieces of a piece of media as we are thinking about it, sort of very intellectual approaches. How do you balance that with the domination of feelings in that whole thing?
Yeah. So Matt, what a great question. So you noticed the 3 parts of my talk. That first one is very cognitive. Asking critical questions about media is stepping back and gaining that critical distance that's really important. But tackling the topic of propaganda forces us into the realm of feelings, right? Because you can't understand propaganda unless you address it at the feeling level. And that's why we have to have intellectual humility as we encounter the fact that you may see a piece of propaganda and it may make you angry, and it may make me feel all patriotic. And like, your feelings are valid, but so are mine, right? And so we have to acknowledge that there's no one right way to feel, right? So dealing with propaganda brings us into that place of being able to honor the fact that we are people who have different feelings about different kinds of media. That's the second part of my talk. And then the third part of this talk, understanding how it's probable that you never see the same kind of media that I see. You never see the same kind of propaganda that I see. You never get exposed to the same kind of messages. So that in some ways, we need opportunities to talk across our differences more than ever now. And so that's where that community convening function of public and academic and school libraries can be so very powerful. But think of it in those 3 terms. Yes, it's cognitive. Yes, it's addressing us at the feeling level. That's what propaganda does best. And yes, it's also thinking about the way in which algorithmic personalization has made our environment, ironically, in a time when we have the world's content at our fingertips, we have less diversity in the content of messages we receive. And that's an irony that has real consequences for citizenship and for learning. All right, I think our time is up, so I wish we had more time together, but Matt, thank you so much for your great question. Linda, thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed the opportunity to share my ideas. Please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions.
Thank you so much, Renee. That was awesome. We really appreciate it. All right, thanks everyone. I'll be sending a follow-up email with the recording and the evaluation if you missed it, and future speakers. What a great way to kick us off. Thank you so much, Renee. Have a great day. Bye.